Hi, I'm Jen Schwinghammer.
And I'm Krista Britton.
And we're with Hillshire Realty Group at EXP, and today we're going to be talking about the home buying process.
This is great for whether you have bought before or if you're a new home buyer. All right, so the first thing that's important, the number one thing in the home buying process is to contact a realtor.
The next thing that you kind of want to do is make sure that you are contacting a lender. And sometimes when we say contact your realtor first or contacting a realtor first, it's because even though you may have somebody who you have your checking, savings, or what have you accounts with, a lot of times we have our clients who reach out to us for lender referrals, and really that's just people that we've worked with in the past that we've really trusted and had good experiences with that we can pass on to you.
And sometimes a lot of people have come to me and said, hey, I've already reached out to my bank, which is totally fine, but it's also good to talk to somebody, get a second opinion, and have someone local that you can get a hold of.
Yes.
Because when you're doing the home buying process, I like to say people get sick of me, you're gonna get sick of the mortgage broker, because we're gonna be reaching out to you constantly, asking questions, maybe needing last minute signatures. So it's someone that you're gonna have to enjoy working with, and that is someone that's easy to communicate with and someone that you get along with as well.
Yes. So you've contacted your realtor, you've contacted a mortgage broker. Now what?
All right, so you've got your pre-approval letter, all of that. So now this is more of the fun part, right? Where you get to start looking. So one of the things, we do not want to go show houses to someone that has not been pre-approved. Not because we don't trust them or think we're gonna sell them a house, but because we're not in the market to go break people's hearts. Because if you go and you're looking at, $700,000 houses when you're really only pre-approved or comfortable with a $500,000 house payment, you're never gonna get that $700,000 home out of your head, because that's a big jump.
It is, yeah. So realtor, lender, check. Time to start looking, pre-approval. We know where we're gonna be, so what's next from there? Narrowing down where you wanna be and what your list of the I wants are.
Yeah, and your I wants can be, I want an attached garage. I have to have a minimum of 3 bedrooms. I need it to be only one level. It needs to have a walkability score of 90. Whatever it is, everyone has different needs. So it just depends. And sometimes those needs can change.
Yes,
through
the process, absolutely.
A fun thing that's not mean is, I like to say buyers are liars,
yeah.
right? And I'm guilty of this too as a buyer. You'll start going out and say, hey, this is really, really important, but you start looking at an area and you're like, you know what, that might not be as important. I actually have found that I really like this, so I can give this up. Or, you know what, I'm not finding anything in this area, but I've been noticing this area, so let's get rid of this area and now I wanna look over here. And that's totally normal too. When you're looking, that's what you're doing. You need to compare, and your needs or your idea of what you want can change, and that's okay.
Yes, that's all part of the process. So we've been looking at houses, we've decided on an area, we have decided, we know what we want, and then we're going out and we find it. And we're like, we have our pre-approval letter. We found this house. It's in sort of the budget that we want to be in. What's the next step that we take from there?
All right, so this is where we get to make that offer. And I feel like the initial offer is always the scariest. But what I like to remind buyers, making an offer is free. It doesn't cost you any money. Right? You've already got the pre-approval. You don't have to give them any money when you make the offer. Nothing's due till after your offer is accepted, right? And one of the big questions people have is, well, how much do I offer? How do I figure that out? And luckily, you're working with a real estate professional that will help guide you through that. We'll look at comparable properties. We're gonna call the listing agent, see how many offers, if any, they have. We'll look at time on market. There's a lot of different things that will go into making an offer, presenting an offer, right?
There's communication throughout this whole thing between you, your realtor, and then the realtors. So it may be sometimes that when we reach out to the other agent on the other end, there's something important maybe to that person who's selling that home, and we're gonna try to figure that out. And that's really just kind of coming together, collaborating on this transaction and seeing if we can get it all to work out for everybody and get our offer accepted.
And what I tell everyone is, worst case, they can say no, or they can accept it, and sometimes that might be scarier than a no. And also, they can do a counter offer. And sometimes a counter offer can be something as simple as, hey, can we actually move the date or something like that? Or it can be price, it can be multiple things. But a lot of times at that point, we just talk it out. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. No harm, no foul. Now you've made that offer. But in this scenario, let's say, okay, we've come to an agreement and your offer is accepted.
Really, once you put your offer out there and let's say your offer has been accepted, the timeline kind of begins. And in real estate, we have a term that we use all the time in contracts, and that's time is of the essence.
Yes.
So really, you're starting out day one. Whenever you have gotten your offer accepted, that next business day is day one of the transaction. The first really 2 weeks of the transaction, you're working really closely with your realtor during that time. Usually it's pretty much default language within the contract that the first 3 business days are what you have to turn in, what's called your earnest money. Your earnest money is really just like a good faith deposit that you are going to move forward with this transaction. It's kind of showing the seller, I'm serious. I want to move forward with this transaction. It's usually 1% of the purchase price of the home. So if you have a $500,000 home, you're usually looking at a $5,000 earnest money deposit that gets deposited with the title and escrow company.
And that has to be cash. That can't be, hey, here's my credit card or anything like that. I've had that happen in the past, and no, that money needs to be liquid because it is going to be deposited with escrow, which is a third party who's holding the money. Right?
Yes.
And also it's really important to note that also during this inspection period, that's your get out of jail free card when you can get your earnest money back. So just because you've given it to escrow doesn't mean you can't get that back if you decide to walk away from the purchase.
Absolutely, and that's kind of one of our biggest fiduciary responsibilities is trying to protect that earnest money of yours, letting you know when is a good time, when is the timeline, when do you have to be able to turn this earnest money in to, if things aren't going very well, to back out and still receive your earnest money back without losing it. This all doesn't get held through us. We don't hold the earnest money. Again, that's through the title company, and that's really that neutral third party throughout this transaction who's going to help us with the money, who's going to help us, clear up the title and give ownership and take ownership. And buyers and sellers are both responsible for paying their own fees when it comes to the title company.
Yeah. And then another part of that with the contingency period is the home inspection.
Yes.
Right? So generally you'll have 10 business days starting the day after
within that 3 business days when your earnest money is due. Don't worry, we're keeping track of this for you.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. We have a timeline put together. We're keeping track. We're keeping you on top of that. Like, hey, you guys, we have next week. So these are the things that we need to follow up on. So generally, what we do is, let's say your offer is accepted. Now we have ordered that home inspection. We try and do that as soon as possible. The general home inspection, they come out and they're doing the roof, they're doing dry rot, they're going in the crawl space, they're doing all the big things, right? And then from there, they might recommend, okay, well, I noticed this with the roof or this with the water heater, so you should probably get some experts out here in those specific areas. And a lot of times people are booked out. So that's why doing the general home inspection as soon as possible to identify if we need anyone else to come out is really important, all right?
Yeah. I like to say that the home inspection is really a visual inspection of the entire home, and that's including the attic and the crawl space. The default language in our real estate contract is 10 business days. So we have 10 business days to do our inspection, to have any specialists come out if they need to look at anything, and to have enough time to be able to, if there is things that need to be negotiated, negotiate back and forth with the sellers. That whole entire time, those 10 business days, it doesn't sound like a lot of time, but that's really almost half of the transaction. In general, we like to say it takes about 30 days from the time your offer is accepted to the time your house closes. For this whole process is about 30 days, and that 10 business days really is the 2 weeks, and that's half of it. So we get a lot of that done. And I know a lot of times people are like, a home inspector? Where do I find one of those? Well, we have home inspectors that we can recommend to you if need be. They're home inspectors that we've worked with several times. So there's no need to worry about that. Your realtor has referrals for you. That's a big part of having us on your team.
And besides a general home inspection, you're also going to want to have your radon checked, your radon levels checked, which that takes a couple days. You're also going to want to either have a sewer scope or, depending on the property, septic inspection and a well test done. So every property will have different addendums depending on the different needs of that property.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that radon is a newer one that I think a lot of people are like, radon, do I need radon?
Yep.
What is radon? A lot of these things that we're testing though, when we're testing radon and we're looking, at a sewer line, these are big ticket items where if something is wrong, with one of these two, or they're a fail or what have you, getting these things repaired and fixed is just a bigger ticket item. So that's why we're taking such a close look.
One last note is, when we decide to renegotiate, it doesn't just have to be repairs. We could say, hey, instead of repairs, we would like you to cover our closing costs or reduce the price of the house. There's different things that can happen there. And that's a huge misconception. So before we move on, it doesn't just have to be the repairs. We can do things in lieu of the repairs.
And that is something really common. I think a lot of times people want to know, okay, let's say, like, what am I looking at here? This is why we get the specialist out here. What are we looking at? What are we looking at? Dollar amount or like labor to put in to fix this? And maybe I have this bid or this quote, which is going to help me get an idea of what I'm looking at, but I don't really necessarily want to maybe go with this company. I want to shop around, but 10 business days is not enough time to shop around. So it's a great point.
Putting it all on the seller, like, hey, we want you to fix this. The seller is not going to do the most expensive fix.
Right.
They're
Not
just
all the
not.
time.
Yeah, not all the time. Generally, most people aren't going to spend a ton of money on something they're selling to someone else.
Yeah.
Right? And that's just kind of the way it is.
Yeah.
So if it's better to, hey, I'd rather take this money, put it in my pocket, so that way I can pay for the repair later the way I want it done,
then that's something that we can always explore too. So being in the inspection contingency, having repairs that need to be done does not necessarily mean we're gonna have somebody actually do the repairs. There are other ways that we can go about working around this.
Right.
With that, we've gone through, we're gonna stick with this or we're not. So what's up next? And that's really the appraisal. In real estate, not just a buyer has to approve for a house, but the house itself has to be approved for the loan as well. So buyers have to be approved for the loan and the house has to be approved for the loan. And how they do that rather, is through an appraisal.
So the bank will order an appraiser, or the mortgage company will order an appraisal to come out once we give them the go-ahead, right? I don't like to have my appraisal ordered unless I know, I'm like, okay, actually, yeah, it looks like we're gonna make it through the inspection period, because I don't want my buyers paying for an appraisal of a home that they end up not buying.
Right.
So that's why that comes up after the home inspection.
Yes.
Right, and you can generally start seeing the writing on the wall if it's gonna go one way or the other.
Yes.
So, and sometimes I'll check in with the lender, be like, hey, when do we need to put in the order for an appraisal? Because depending on the market, sometimes appraisers are backed up. And in the meantime, while we're waiting for the appraisal to come back, your lender is going to be asking you for, your W-2s, all of this fun paperwork. It gets stressful because you're having to go back and look at documents. They're going to want to look at your bank accounts. All this is going to be submitted to underwriting, where they're going to make sure, hey, you are qualified for this loan.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Underwriting is really the process of them making sure that you and this house are going to qualify, and that the mortgage broker and the lending company is actually going to be able to make a good investment by having you as their client.
Yeah. So now everything has been submitted to underwriting. You have final approval. They're going to send docs over to the title company. The title company is now going to reach out to you, the buyer, and say, hey, come in and sign and bring this much money or wire this much money for your down payment, and come and sign your life away, essentially. Come sign all the documents. And to make that clear, people get confused about when signing happens. In a perfect world, I like signing to be at least 1 day prior to closing, if not a little bit sooner. But sometimes, depending on the type of loan, you can sign the same day as the day that your house actually closes.
Yes.
Right? So
yes, you will get sent from your lender and or the title company what's called your closing disclosures 3 business days before you're able to sign your documents. And from there, that's when they will coordinate between you and your lender and the title company. You're going to coordinate when you're going to wire over your down payment. I think a question that we get asked a lot is, are my down payment funds and my closing cost funds the same? That's one that we hear a lot. Those are 2 different things. But when you get your closing disclosure, you're going to see all of these kind of as line items laid out for you so that you know exactly all that you are going to be responsible for financially. And that's going to be, you know, your closing costs, your down payment, the fees for title, property tax fees that you are now responsible for. They'll have those prorated for you. All that is done through the title and escrow company and presented to you, Mr. or Mrs. or person buyer, you know, before you move forward with signing all of these documents.
And then once you're ready to sign, I do have buyers that will reach out, be like, no one's contacted me about signing. I'm going to be out of town. I'm going to have this. I'm going to have that. That can all be arranged. It's really important to let us know if, hey, you're going to be gone the week before or the week of.
Please let us
know. Honestly, I'm horrible. I just bought a house and I forgot that I was going to be gone the week of closing, and my husband reminded me, and I'm like, I'm the worst realtor for myself.
Realtors, they're just like us.
Yeah, just like everyone. And so we were on vacation, and they sent out a notary who came and signed for us. We had to pay an extra fee to do that, but it's totally possible, and it was worth it because we didn't want to, you know, mess our vacation with our family.
Yeah.
So it's just really important to kind of look at the calendar, realize when you're going to be gone, if you're going to be gone, and that's just something to kind of remember, which I did not.
Yeah. Well, and all of our out-of-state buyers, because they do exist, you know, where you're maybe not going to be in the state to be able to sign. That's something that the title and escrow company deals with often, and they have workarounds for that, where you'll still be able to sign your loan documents and still be able to move forward with closing, even if you won't be in the area.
And the thing to remember is they're not going to schedule a signing with you until they have the loan docs. Right? Because there's nothing for you to sign, and they've got a lot of signings, a lot of things going on, and they're not going to reach out to the buyer to sign anything until your mortgage broker has sent over the loan docs. All right? And this is a common misconception. And this is also sometimes why we have delays in closings, because maybe for whatever reason the loan is taking a little bit longer than expected, or there's been a couple of hiccups that need to be addressed, which happens all the time, which is always. I personally like to close in the middle of a week on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, because if we need to do any kind of extension, at least we are closing by a
within
Friday.
the same week.
Yeah, because most people have scheduled to move that weekend.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So that's what I found, you know, through trial and error to be the best time to try and set a closing in case we do need to ask for extra days.
Agree. Same. I completely agree with that.
All right. So let's say it's 2 days before closing. You've signed everything.
I've gotten my closing disclosure. I'm ready.
You've given them their money. Now it's just waiting till that closing day. So let's say 2 days later, the loan officers will send in the money for the loan. You've already given them your money for the down payment. And now it's just a matter of having it fund and then receiving the wires and it recording with the city. And once it's funded and recorded, you are good to go, and we can meet you at 5 o'clock on closing day.
It's key time
to get the keys.
It's key time. That's literally our favorite time.
Yeah,
it's key time.
It's happened.
Yeah, everybody's favorite time is key time. All of that too is really going to be handled through the title and escrow company. They're going to be the ones that are going to be transferring all the funds. They're going to be the ones that are going to set the recording of the title with the county and let all us parties know, buyer, seller, and both realtors, when that's all done. And I mean, from there, it's really a done deal. It's default language in our contracts to have it be 5 p.m. on the day of closing. So that's usually why we don't end up meeting until after 5, even though you may have funded and recorded at 11 a.m.
And in the meantime, one of the things that you could remember to be doing, which I also forgot, was putting the water in your name.
Absolutely,
and the sewer.
utilities.
Yes, all of the things. Every county does it a little bit different. Some will let you go a few days. Some turn the water off that day, and now you have to pay to turn the water back on.
Yes.
So,
and all of this information can be provided from your realtor, who will ask the title and escrow company to send you over all of this information. And within that, they'll be able to have, you know, sometimes there's voter registration in there. There's a U.S. postage service where you can send them a document with your new address on it, and all of the utility information that you'll need to start this new chapter.
Yay.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for listening. Once again, my name is Krista Britton.
And I'm Jennifer Schwinghammer.
And we are teammates on the Hillshire Realty Group team at eXp Realty. We appreciate you listening to this video. And if you have any questions about buying or selling a home, we would love to take your calls, emails, texts,
yes,
whatever.
Feel free to reach out to us.
Yes. Thanks for listening. Have a great day.